This is KPPQ-LP Ventura, 104.1 FM, and we're in the Women's Room, where we appreciate and support each other. I'm your host, Kathleen Good. We need more women in government. We need equity with men in representation. We need a place at the table so that we have our voices heard. And most importantly, we need a woman's perspective on every issue. For these reasons, I have asked the leader of a local women's political action committee to be here in the Women's Room. Hi, Jeannette.
Hi.
My guest today is Jeannette Sanchez-Palacios, president of the Ventura County Women's Political Council. She is also the district director for 44th District Assembly member Jackie Irwin and worked formerly for the TV network Telemundo. We're so happy to have you here today, Jeannette.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, and would like to know more about the council. Now, the VCWPC, the Ventura County Women's Political Council, is a PAC, a Political Action Committee. So now that we're through with the acronyms, could you start by telling our listener what a Political Action Committee is and what it does?
Absolutely. Again, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. The organization is a Political Action Committee, also known as a PAC. And that basically means that we are an organization that pulls campaign contributions from its members to fund candidates who are seeking political office. And that is one of our goals as an organization, as a PAC.
Okay. So what is the mission of the Women's Political Council?
So the VCWPC is a multi-partisan organization whose objective is to achieve equality for all women. We encourage, we recruit, we train, and support diverse women, candidates who are basically sharing our goals of the VCWPC, and that is bringing women's perspective to every issue, particularly in reproductive health, social, educational, environmental, and economic justice.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a big agenda there.
It is.
Let's break that down a little bit and get to know a little more details about the council.
Sure.
Now, how large is your membership?
So currently we have about 160 members throughout Ventura County.
Uh-huh. And who can become a member?
Pretty much anybody. Anyone can, even though it is a women's organization, we do have men who are members who support our missions and visions and goals as well. Mm-hmm. And we also have students who are members. So pretty much anyone can become a member.
I'm going to ask this again, but do you favor any particular party when you endorse a woman candidate?
We do not. What we look for is that the goals and missions and that we have the same, pretty much we share the same agenda with the candidate, and that the candidate supports our main goals as well. So we, like I said earlier, we're multi-partisan. We don't prefer one party over another. It's based on issues, their goals and what they're trying to achieve.
Okay, so they could be libertarian, green,
Mm-hmm.
Republican,
Yes.
Democratic, or independent,
Yes.
I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So as long as it's aligned with our goals and mission.
Uh-huh. And so what is the process that the membership uses to decide whether or not to endorse a candidate?
So this year, actually, right now for the primary elections that will be happening in June, we implemented a new process. Our members actually have the opportunity to look through each candidate who is seeking our endorsement, look through their application as it pertains to the questions that are, valid to us. And so our members play a role in, we invite the candidates to come to a, sort of a meet and greet town hall. We invite our members to come and interview, per se, the candidates, ask them questions, hear from the candidate themselves, directly from them. And since they have some of the responses to the application that the candidate fills out for us, the member can ask a follow-up question from if something wasn't clear on their application or not. And so then once that process is done, at the end of that same night or day, the members sort of discuss amongst themselves and recommend who they want endorsed. Then that recommendation goes to our executive board.
So do they vote?
It's like a vote. We give them sort of a survey that they fill out, and then we ask, do you recommend endorsement for this candidate, or who do you recommend for this particular seat? And I'll just give you the example for the primary elections that we're going to be having in June. We had candidates for lieutenant governor. We had assembly. We had congressional candidates. We also had a local race candidate who wanted our endorsement. And so our members get to decide and make a recommendation as to who they would like endorsed.
And then when you have a candidate, then you help them.
Right. And so once the executive board, once the executive board basically puts the stamp of approval for those recommendations, then we work with the candidate. There's a contribution that we can make to the candidates based upon the, whether they need the contribution. A lot of candidates, they do. They need contribution, monetary contribution. So we'll help them in that way. We'll also send out sort of a notice to our members, both via email as well as on our social media sites, and a mailer letting them know these are endorsed candidates for this upcoming election. Please be sure to vote, type of thing.
Oh, wow. So is there any special criteria that a potential candidate needs for endorsement?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the crucial things that we look at is viability of a candidate. Right now, and pretty much at any given time for any election, there are a lot of candidates who can pose themselves as someone who's running for office. But it's crucial to see that the candidate, one, is viable, meaning that they can win the election. But the other thing, too, is that they also have to support what our organization supports, and that's reproductive rights, education, social, economic, and environmental justice.
So how can you tell that if they're viable, that they can win?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's why we have them fill out an application. We do ask certain questions about their campaign in terms of how much money have you raised? How much money do you think you need to raise? We ask them if they have a campaign committee. So, and those are the questions that are not made public to our members, but it's our political action committee members only who get to see that information, because a lot of that information is sensitive, or the candidates really don't want it to be out there in the public. And so we respect that. But that allows us to know, okay, this person knows what they're doing. They know how much they need to raise. They have raised the money or have come close to raising the money. And that's a good indicator as a political person that I've ran campaigns in the past. It's a good indicator if you're able to stay in the race to raise money. That's the number one thing for any candidate. You have to be able to raise money. And so if I get a candidate who says all the right things but has not been able to raise money, then that also gives me a red flag, because that means, why aren't people buying into your campaign, basically? Why aren't they investing in you?
So would that be the issues that they represent, or their ability to communicate the issues?
It could be, right. And communicating the issues is very important as well, because you could have the perfect candidate on paper, but then when you interview them and you have them before an audience, and if they just cannot communicate, then that's also something that we consider. So, and that's why it's important to have our members be there when the candidates are asking for our support, and give them that opportunity to interact with them.
Right, right. So do you actually go out and recruit potential candidates?
We certainly can. Our organization is open to pretty much anyone who wants to join. And so if you're not necessarily thinking you're going to run for office, the different workshops that we do hold and the different events that we do have sometimes help people go in that direction and actually ponder and think about, maybe I do want to run for office. Maybe this is for me and I just hadn't thought about it. There are instances like that. And so we can certainly go out and recruit women who want to run for office or who hadn't even thought about running for office and tell them, hey, well, we have a workshop on what is it like to be a candidate? Why don't you come and check it out? And so we'll have follow-up conversations and we can go from there.
Okay, well, that sounds very comprehensive.
Yes, it is.
So who are some of the candidates the council has already endorsed and supported?
So we actually in Ventura County have, if you consider congressional, Senate, Assembly, they're all women, and all of those women have been endorsed or supported by the VCWPC.
Right.
We also have women who have been elected to school boards. We also have had women who have been elected to county supervisors positions. So pretty much anyone from local school board to your assembly congressional seat, VCWPC has endorsed or has been a part of making an endorsement in those races.
Oh, wow.
And supporting those women.
Again, very comprehensive. So would you endorse a man?
At this time, we have only endorsed women, and that has not been part of the conversation because our goal is to ensure that women's representation can be at par with men's. We are really just focusing on endorsing women.
Okay, that makes sense. So what advice would you give a woman considering a run for political office?
I think that women in general, we think a lot about running for office. We don't just do it. We think and think and think and think. And one of the a piece of advice that I think I would give is, if you're wanting to run for office, is okay, let's get your ducks in order. Let's get them all prepared. Let's make it happen and do it. A lot of the times we are afraid to run for office. It's a scary, daunting thing. I've done it before. So I know from personal experience, but I think doing it and getting out there and forgetting the naysayers, forgetting, those voices in our heads that make us doubt, and just getting out there and doing it.
Right. So that's what you would advise. Get rid of those voices that say you can't.
Exactly.
You can.
Yep. Form your group of supporters and have them, help you along the way.
Right. Well, that's some really good advice. So what are some of the reasons we lack women in public office? I mean, I know, many men will vote for a woman. But why do we have fewer women? Why are women so reluctant to run?
Again, I think, bringing my own experience to the conversation. I'm a mom, first and foremost. I'm a mom, right? And I have 2 kids. And for me, having to think about exposing my children to public office because I'm in public office, that's a thought that I had. I also think that, again, we're always waiting to be asked to run. We don't just say, I'm going to run, but we think 10 times more over the experience that I may or may not have, the talent that I may or may not have, versus a man who just says, well, I'm going to do it, and they do it. I think we as women, I don't know what's wired in our brain to want us. We feel like we have to have all the boxes checked off before we can do it.
We've got to be perfect, just like the way we have to look.
Yeah, exactly. And that doesn't, there is no perfect.
Yeah.
We have to go out and do it.
Right. Okay. So if we want to have more women in political office, what advice would you give women in general?
I think we have to start also supporting each other. Not every woman will have the right agenda, and I get that. And so I understand we have to, there's a balance that has to be found between and among the many things that the candidate will represent, But I think that if we do have a female running and things are more or less in place, then let's support the woman. Let's support her and help her get elected if that's what we're seeking.
Even if we kind of maybe don't like some things about her.
Right. I mean, it's, there's some things that, would we gauge a male candidate by his voice or by the way he comes across as bossy or not bossy? We don't do that with men. With women, we think about, well, her voice is too annoying, or look at the way she looks. We could certainly look at our most recent election, at the presidency. There were so many other things that we were focused on with the male and female candidate, and clearly the correct, in my eyes, the correct candidate had all the qualifications, had all the experience, was the female, and yet people just decided not to look at that. And so there are a lot of things that, for one, that we could just start is let's support. If there is a viable female candidate, let's support the woman candidate.
Yes, I had a psychologist on, Dr. Max Furman, who said the same thing. We're not going to have a woman president, for example, until we all women get behind her. We can't let our little, prejudices and, our catty little thoughts about a woman who is clearly qualified get in the way of our backing her.
Exactly. Yeah. And, I was listening, actually just coming on my way here, the former lady, Michelle Obama, former first lady, she talked about why, what's in our brain, what are we thinking that, we're in the situation that we're in. I mean, we need more women leading and more females leading, and yet we've got something else happening right now. So.
Okay, we're going to have to take a little break here. This is KPPQ-LP Ventura, 104.1 FM, and we're in the Women's Room, where we appreciate and support each other. I'm your host, Kathleen Good. My guest today is Jeannette Sanchez-Palacios, president of the Ventura County Women's Political Council. And we're back. And we were just talking about women backing and supporting each other. So what skills or talents, values, attitudes does a woman who is thinking about seeking an elected position need?
That's a great question. And I think anybody you ask will have a different answer, because depending on
what they need,
right?
Yeah.
Having worked for an elected official, and being on the other side of the fence, per se, what I see as effective is that the candidate, the woman, should and has to be open-minded. You have to be able to talk across the aisle. You have to be able to listen to all sides. There aren't two sides to the story. There's multiple sides.
Right.
And having that open mind and that open perspective, gets you farther than just having a certain tunnel vision, per se.
Right, or rigidity.
Right.
Yeah. So, we'd love to get a little background on you.
Okay.
How did you get into politics?
I got into politics not intentionally. I think I've always been interested in politics. My background comes more the journalistic background. I did print media for a long time. I started out in print journalism, and I think with the issues that you reported on at that time, I interviewed several elected officials and several key leaders of the community, and I think that's where my interests began to flame even more, because I started thinking, who are these people that everyone sees and holds to at such high, you put them up on a pedestal, and yet they are the ones making decisions that impact our community. And I just started getting more interested in just getting to know who are these people that, we got to get them on interview, or we have to get a quote from them because this will make my story. And so I started seeing it from that perspective, and I was just curious, like, who are these people, right? And then I think I just started realizing that they are just like you and me, a human being who many of them do want to do good in their community. Many of them want to give back, and they're being a public servant. And so from there, when I went to UCLA, I decided to have a minor in political science with an emphasis of women in politics.
Oh, wow.
And so that's how I kind of, started evolving in politics. My original thought or plan was never to work for an elected official or be in politics. Again, it was just, happenstance. Every time an opportunity knocks on my door, I welcome it. And through the different jobs and positions that I've had is how I eventually landed where I'm at now.
So you work for Jackie Irwin, our 44th District Assembly member. What do you do for her?
So I'm her district director, and I basically manage both her offices. She has 2 district offices, one in Oxnard and one in Camarillo in Ventura County. And so the day-to-day work that happens in the district while she's in Sacramento Monday through Thursday, that's what we take care of here in the district. Yeah.
Wow. So you're an immigrant, as we all are, from some point in our history, with an inspiring personal story. Now, how did you get to where you are now? I mean, how did you get to college, for example?
Right. Yeah, so an immigrant, absolutely. I came with my siblings. I'm the youngest of 3, and my mom, she's the one who brought us over, to seek the American dream, a better life. We are from Guatemala, which is a third world country, and she wanted more for her children and decided, I'm going to take the venture. I'm going to cross the border, and I'm bringing my kids with me.
Brave woman.
I was 4 years old when she decided to do that. And so I have like snapshots in my mind of the experience. But yeah, I had to learn a whole new language. Spanish is my first language. I had to learn English when I started basically school. And from there, just kind of my brother and my sister, we were each other's support system while my parents worked. My father, typical mechanic, and my mom was the housekeeper who cleaned homes for a living. And while like I said, my siblings and I, we went to school, we did our homework together. We were our support system. My oldest sister really took the reins on raising us while my mom was, making a living for herself and for us. And so I never really had the map, the planned out map of how to and where to go to school or how to get good grades.
Right, because they didn't come from that experience.
They didn't come from that. And they encouraged us to do well in school, get good grades, and that was it.
But that's important. I mean, so they had the right ideas.
They did. They really did. And I think when I was in high school, it was when you're a junior, you start thinking about where am I going to go to college, and I didn't have the competitive grades to from high school go straight to university. and well, many of my friends did, then I opted for community college, which for me was my lifesaver. For many reasons. Community college gave me the support, and it gave me basically the tools that I needed to figure out, what am I going to do with my life? Where am I going to go? And it was in community college that I met my mentors that to this day are still part of my life.
Oh, wow.
Who helped, and maybe without even knowing that they helped in that way, but they helped basically guide me into what I should do. What did I care about? What did I want to do when I grew up? And they really were there to support me, and not necessarily to tell me, well, you should do this or you should do that. But they were the moral support that I needed, that in so many ways my parents, because they were working, didn't really have the tools to give me that support, but I had these mentors that they did, and faculty that played a huge part in my classes and my counselors. And so from that community college, that's how I was able to transfer to UCLA.
Wow.
Something that I never even imagined. I remember my high school friends being accepted to UCLA and thinking, wow, that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
And it seemed so far-fetched for me at that time. But then I ended up transferring to UCLA, and then I ended up going for my master's from CSUN. So, I think community college really gave me the foundation to really go from there and just kind of make the rest my own.
Okay. Well, let's go to a story. So who are your women heroes, and what did they teach you?
Again, I have, if I look at family, my sister being one of them, because she really at the age of 6, 7 years old was at the helm of my brother and I. So she really had to sacrifice a lot to be able to raise us and be able to be there with us. So she's definitely a woman that I look up to, and a woman hero for me. Definitely my grandmother as well, who, just passed a few months ago. But she was always someone who said, if you're going to do something, do it right. Make sure that your tools are sharpened and do it. Don't, she wasn't for mediocrity. So that stuck with me a lot. She was a fighter. She definitely was a feisty woman. And, and then, of course, my mom and, someone who I also work for now, Assemblymember Jackie Irwin, she is someone that I look up to, not just because she's taller than me, but because she has a lot to offer, people who are around her. She cares a lot about her community. She has a lot of a great ethic and, to me, unmeasurable qualities that define a great leader and someone who is transparent and who cares about her community.
Okay, well, good answers. Good people. So now might be a good time to talk about your run for city council. How did it go?
So my run for city council, it was my first time being a candidate. Like I said earlier, I've been sort of behind the back scenes of running campaigns for other candidates or working for other elected officials. And I had never been the candidate, and it's a total different thing. Because all of a sudden you're not telling someone what to say, but you are the one saying it, and those words stick to you, right? Because people then will hold you accountable to what you said or what you didn't say. So it was a completely different perspective. I, however, did learn a lot. You learn who your friends are and who your friends are not. And I think that while I did not succeed in being elected, I succeeded in breaking a mold that I was afraid to break.
Which was
putting myself out there.
Putting,
being the candidate and as a Latina, as a woman of color, putting my neck out there, sticking my neck out, and me being the target, basically. It's always easier for someone else to do it.
Right.
And this time I was just like, I don't hear my story. I don't hear my voice, and I need to do it.
Well, good for you.
So,
So you actually ran on a platform of diversity.
I did.
And why did you decide to do that?
I did because we lack diversity in my city, in the city of Ventura. If you look at the representatives who are elected officials, very few are that I can count on are Latina of background, or who represent me, basically. And so for me, that is important, because Ventura City is, I think, an almost, more than 20% Latino, and yet we don't have a diverse city council as representative, and that and that's not to the fault of any of the current council members, but it certainly shows that we need diversity.
Right. So as a Hispanic woman or Latina, what distinct set of cultural values or skills or attitudes can you bring to the table?
Yeah, and I think back to our most recent Thomas fire that happened. There were while the information dissemination was excellent, thank God there weren't any tragedies related to the fire directly. There was also a lot of lack of just getting information out in Spanish for our Spanish speakers. And I think that when you have a diverse group of, whether it be council or director or whatever, but if you have a diverse leadership team, you will pick up on, hey, we need to translate this into Spanish. We need this disseminated to communities who may not have internet. We need to knock on doors for those people who don't have text messaging available to them. So I think all those small things that may seem, or things that may seem small to the naked eye or to someone else just having a conversation, it matters to someone like me who grew up in a poverty neighborhood, who didn't have all the tools and access to internet or phones. It matters to me that I have a bilingual household, that I know that my mother-in-law does not speak English. So all of that comes to mind, and all of that is brought to the table when you have diversity.
Well, that just makes a whole lot of sense, bringing your voice. Okay, well, we're out of time, but thank you so much, Jeannette, for coming in to the Women's Room to tell us about the Ventura County Women's Political Council, and especially for sharing your personal, very inspiring story.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And we'd love to have you back again and finish that story.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
For more information about the Ventura County Women's Political Council, you can go to www.vcwpc.org. This is KPPQ-LP Ventura, 104.1 FM, and we're in the Women's Room, where we appreciate and support each other. I'm your host, Kathleen Good.